back to Lab at Home with the Museum of Life and Science. I'm excited to be here with you all along with Catalyst volunteer Caroline, who will be moderating the chat with us today. I hope that, as always, you will help lead our program with your thoughts and questions and ideas in the chat. So today is really exciting. We are kicking off our special theme for the month of February. We are celebrating Black History Month with this, our Black Excellence in Science series. Each week of the series, we will celebrate the work and contributions of historical and current Black scientists. In the upcoming weeks, we're going to be highlighting local Black scientists doing their work right now in the Triangle area. But since February is also a chance to celebrate Black history, I thought we could start with a science pioneer who lived in the early 1900s. His name is Dr. Ernest Everett Just, and he studied cells, plants and animals, and marine biology. If you happen to know anything about Dr. Ernest Everett Just, we would love to hear from you in the chat. Feel free to chime in at any time. I'm going to go ahead and ask Caroline to cue up one of our pictures here, because we're going to start out today just by looking at a few pictures, just because they're cool stuff to see. I first learned about Dr. Just when our exhibits team at the museum was designing a new exhibit space in the wetlands area, because the exhibit features a really beautiful quote from Dr. Just that goes like this: "We feel the beauty of nature because we are a part of nature, and because we know that however much in our separate domains we abstract from the unity of nature, this unity remains." And the next part of the quote goes, "Although we may deal with particulars, we return finally to the whole pattern woven out of these." This quote is part of the exhibit in the wetlands because Dr. Just made a lot of awesome contributions to marine biology and spent a lot of his time studying marine or water ecosystems, just like the wetlands. And I think it's a really nice way of looking at nature, but it's also a really nice way of looking at nature as a scientist. Dr. Just is famous for studying organisms under normal conditions rather than removing them from their context. Let's go ahead and I want to check out this next slide for us, Caroline. So here he is, the man himself. Ernest Everett Just was born in 1883 in Charleston, South Carolina. And I think it's important to point out that this was just 18 years after the 13th Amendment abolished slavery, except for prison labor in the US. And there were a lot of limited opportunities for any Black person to receive an education at this time. But Ernest's mother taught him to read and sent him to schools where he really excelled. He was always interested in the natural world around him, just like I bet all of you are, right? He noticed a lot of living things. He loved to explore waterways. I like to do that. I bet a lot of you guys like to explore waterways too. And just like I think both you and I, he was fascinated with the natural world, which led him to study zoology and botany, which is the study of animals and the study of plants. He studied that at Dartmouth University and earned his PhD at the University of Chicago. He taught college courses and he did research in the US and in Europe. And what he loved best was doing research. Let's take a look at some of the things that he studied really quickly here. Do you guys recognize either of these things? What do you think? You can let me know in the chat if you have any ideas. What are we looking at? So Dr. Just specialized in studying the eggs of marine or water invertebrates like sandworms and sea urchins. Yeah, you guys got it exactly. We have got sea urchins here. That's the one kind of on the right. That purple one, it's the Atlantic purple sea urchin. And then we have a little sandworm, highly magnified. They're not really that big on the other side here. Dr. Just studied these kinds of invertebrates, meaning they have no backbone. He studied their eggs especially. And we'll go ahead to our next slide here. Because in many cases, he needed a microscope to study these tiny eggs, as well as when he's studying other cells. In just a minute, we are going to learn how to make our own simple microscopes so that all of us can explore the wonderful world around us. Let's go ahead to our last picture, I promise. There is so much more to learn about Dr. Ernest Everett Just's life and studies. He's just a totally fascinating person. Here are some resources in the chat that we'll put in there in just a second, where you can learn more about Dr. Just's life, including one of my favorite children's books, which is about him. I've also included scans of the 2 books Dr. Just wrote. One is about the surface of cells, and the other one is about how to study marine eggs, just like Dr. Just. So we'll put those in the chat here in just a second, but I think let's go ahead and bring it back here. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Caroline, for queuing those up. And then in just a second, she will put those resources in the chat. There's so much exciting stuff to learn about this individual. There's a lot of different places you can learn it. And of course, we know there's so many things to learn about the natural world around us. And when we're looking at things that are small, we often need help. So before we get started, right, I wanted to kind of talk about how we look at things that are small and ask if you guys have any ideas. I think we already said one, but what do you think? So we're scientists and we want to look at the world on a very tiny level. What do you think? What kind of tools do you think that we could use? What do you think? Ooh, a magnifying glass, great idea. Oh, a lot of us are thinking about magnifying glasses. We could use microscopes. I love this, perfect. There's different kinds of microscopes, right? There's some that magnify a certain amount. There's scanning electron microscopes that kind of magnify things that are very, very tiny. They kind of magnify the very smallest of things that it's possible to see. Oh, this is a great contribution. We have a friend saying that some microscopes have like 3 whole lenses. And we'll talk about those lenses in just a second here, because we are going to be making our own microscope. It might be a little bit more like a magnifying glass, but when I was experimenting with it, I felt like I could see things even closer than a magnifying glass could show me. So I think this one counts as a microscope. We know that microscopes have different parts. They have the parts that you look through, the eyepieces, and they have a light at the bottom to illuminate what you're looking at. They have different parts to help hold down what you're looking at. And most importantly, they have these lenses. This is a really good question we have in the chat. Our microscopes that we're making, are they really going to be able to zoom in? That is an excellent question. I think it's best if we see for ourselves whether they can zoom in or not. I would say I think they kind of can, but I'll leave that up to you once we've made them together. I think let's start on creating our microscope, on creating all of these different parts we've talked about, the kind of our eyepiece, the light, and our lenses, which help kind of bend light in such a way that magnifies items or whatever we are looking at. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to my experiment cam to talk about what materials we will be using. Go ahead and switch right here. So I have a couple materials here. I've got a cup. I just have a paper cup. You can use a plastic cup. I've got some paper and a writing utensil. I've got some scissors. I've got some water. And I've got some tape. Now, I have some of this packing tape because it's really nice and clear, and that's really helpful. I also have this special type of dispenser tape, but it's also super clear. I think you can use regular Scotch tape for this. That's kind of almost a little bit more cloudy, but it might change the way that you're able to see, just because it's not super clear. But I think you could still definitely try it with that. I don't know if any of you were able, this one was listed as kind of optional, but if you were able to find kind of pieces of clear food packaging. This was from a little container of nuts that I got from the supermarket. This would be like a number 1 or a number 5 plastic, right? That's kind of like rigid, but also bendy, and it's clear. So I cut out a few pieces of that. I don't know if any of you are using any of that, but let me know if you are so that we can go over that step. But I think that what we can use yeah, if you don't have any of this plastic, we can definitely use our tape, and you'll see how that comes into play. Oh, it sounds like some of us do have some. So let me go ahead and start us right here. Oh, perfect. We have someone, it sounds like they cut up a juice bottle. Oh, that's perfect. I'd say if you can right now, go ahead and cut out a piece of your rigid plastic if you have it. So I cut out 2 because it's going to be up to you what you find more comfortable, but yours can be kind of a small square or a small rectangle, whatever works for you. If you're using tape, then we'll do this step in just a minute, but this is just so we have a second to cut down our viewing device to size here. Something else that I did that I wanted to do beforehand, just because it was a little difficult for me to do, is cut out the bottom of my cup. And you can see I did not do a very neat job. This does not have to be perfect, but I might trim it up a little bit just because some of my friends might be doing the experiment along with us, and they might take just a second to cut up their plastic and or to cut out the bottom of their cup. So I'm kind of trimming my edges here, but it's okay that they're a little jaggedy. Doesn't have to be perfect. Before we move on to our next step, I should also mention that I have a light source. Now, I mentioned a flashlight would be perfect for this, as long as it's something that can fit under your cup. I'm actually going to use my phone as a flashlight just because it's a quick and easy one for me to use here. You're welcome to use any phone that you have access to, anything that will light up the inside of our cup. So let me see how we're doing here. What do you think, guys? Do we have a cup with the bottom cut out of it? And if we're using plastic, do we have any pieces kind of like this? What do you think? Or do you need another minute? Oh, it sounds like a lot of us are ready here. Oh, perfect, perfect. All right, so the next step that we will do, oh, our plastic cup is a little hard to cut. I found that too, actually. I was going to use this, this cup, but I didn't have my craft knife, so I was trying to use scissors, and I figured maybe a plastic, or rather maybe a paper cup would be easier. So we'll give you maybe just one more second. We'll talk about the next step that we're gonna do, which is we are going to, we're gonna trace the shape of the bottom of our cup on our paper. The other thing that you can do, especially if you're catching it from a previous step, is you can just cut a square, because it's definitely something where you can just put it on top of there for what we're gonna use it for. But if you've got the time, I think let's go ahead and trace the bottom of our cup like this, just a little circle on our white paper. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this circle out. And kind of like our cup, does not have to be perfect. We're just going to cut out our circle. There we go. So we want a circle that can kind of just fit on top of our plastic cup, like that. And for our experiment, right, you can just set it on top of there. I think that would work perfectly well. You can also, if you just have a little square, you can put that on top. If you want to take it out into the field, like I know I will be, if I wanted to go out to the wetlands and use my microscope, I'm just going to take a little bit of my tape, just 2 little pieces, to tape my circle here to my cup. There we go, kind of just like taping the lid down. There we go. You can see that it's, it's got a little bit of a space here where you can see through it. That's okay. Again, this one doesn't have to be super precise. It'll work either way. How are we doing, friends? What do you think? Do you think we're maybe ready to move on to our next step here? Definitely let me know. So what we've made right here is what I guess we could call our platform for our microscope. When you're looking at something with a microscope, you have to set it down on something, the platform. The platform is something that, of course, holds what you're looking at, and it's something that helps you kind of shine light through what you're looking at, because you're going to need that light in order to see it up close. Before we finish what our platform is going to look like, I think let's talk about our lenses. So some of us may have some of these kind of plastic pieces here. If you do not need to do the next step, but if you have some tape like I do, some of this packing tape, then this is the step that we are going to do. Go ahead and take a piece. You're going to pull it out and tear it off while being careful not to get it stuck to anything. I have a piece that's about this big. Doesn't have to be super huge. What we're going to do is we're going to fold this in half, sticky side in. And we want to do that really carefully as we can, so that we don't hit any, we don't kind of trap too many air bubbles in there. So here's how I'm going to do that. Kind of grabbing both of these sides, and I'm going to start from the bottom and press carefully. And now I'm just going to kind of go fast like this, just kind of spreading it out like this to try to make sure I have as few air bubbles as possible. And if, like me, you have just a few in there, that's okay, because you can try and push them out like this. I'm just kind of pressing with my nail a little bit. And this doesn't have to be perfectly bubble-free, but it does help because we want a clear, nice clear surface to look through, because this is going to be part of our lens. What do we think, friends? So we've either got some plastic pieces, or we've got our clear tape, and then we've got another step in order to create the rest of our lens. What do you think? Are you ready, friends? Yeah, some of us are ready. Perfect. So what we're going to do now is we're going to use some plain old water, because water does something really awesome when you take a drop of it and you put it on a surface. What does water do when you do that? What would you call that? If I take a little bit of water and I touch it to right there, ooh, this is a great term. It kind of creates almost like a little puddle, or we have a friend saying it beads up. This is great. Water is something that loves to stick to itself. It's not quite sticky like glue, but it loves to stick to itself. And that means that when we have a little puddle of water, if it's not too large a puddle, it kind of likes to stack on top of itself, and it makes almost like a dome shape. Like if you have a little drop of water and you look at it on the side, it almost looks like a little dome. It's a shape that we would call a convex shape. So that means that it kind of goes outward like that. That dome shape in our water droplet is the exact same shape that a lens needs to be in a microscope. So we have our lens right here. And you can experiment with what works for you in terms of having kind of a bigger drop or a smaller drop. I found that when it's a smaller drop, it tends to beat up higher. Whereas if it's like a bigger drop, it tends to kind of spread out more and be thinner. And the taller the dome we have, the better. That's gonna be what works best for us. So we have our lens, we have our platform. I should say too that we can use these as well. I might even go ahead and get, one ready here. There's my drop. The last thing that we will need to complete our microscope is our light source. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my light source on here for just a second. My flashlight is on. All we want to do is put it underneath our platform. And this is now ready to use. It's just kind of a matter of what are we going to look at. So I'll show you kind of the technique that we're going to use, although you may be able to figure it out yourself, how we're going to use this lens, how close we should hold it to our eye or to our face. But before we do that, I wanted to make a slide. So I'm going to turn off my flashlight, my light source for a second. And I'm going to make a slide. So kind of, I guess, traditionally, if you're making a slide in a laboratory, you have two little pieces of plastic or glass. I have two little pieces of plastic. You could also easily use tape. I'll do it with both. What you need to do is just grab a tiny piece of something. So I think what I'm going to do is I have a little bit of this dry moss here. And I want to grab something that I know that can be flattened pretty well. I don't want something that's going to make a big pile. Right, like if I took a whole, penny and put it on here, it might be cool to look at it up close, but it would be difficult with our device because it's not thin enough. The light doesn't shine through it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put my little pieces of moss on here, and I am going to use a drop of water to create my slide. And we'll do it with tape here in just a second. What I'm going to do to make this slide with plastic is to just put a little drop of water on it. And that water will be sticky enough to stick on that top piece. So I'm kind of making a little sandwich here. So I made a little sandwich. You can even see kind of where that water is. That kind of creates, it kind of smushes the two panels together, and it will let me see the thing that is between them more easily. Now, if you're using tape, what you would want to do is take a piece of your tape, and we're going to trap something between these layers, just like I did with that, although we might not need the water. I tried it with water. It does work. So if you want to do that, like I have a little bit of sand that I want to look at. So I've put my sand on the tape, and I'm going to fold it over, and I'm going to press really hard to try and kind of get rid of as many air bubbles as I can. And you can kind of see how it traps those in there. So if you are making any slides, you can do it with tape by trapping your specimen between pieces of tape. You can also use small pieces of plastic to trap your specimen. It sounds like some of us have found some really cool stuff to look at, such as wings and legs from a dead wasp and from a moth. That is so amazing. That's going to be so cool. I can't wait till you see it. I think we're almost ready to take a look. Can I ask, did that kind of clarify that for you about how to make a slide with tape? Or can I explain it anymore? What do you think? I made a couple slides. So I made one with a little leaf. Oh, perfect. So I have one with a little leaf in here, and actually I taped this together with some masking tape, but I think clear tape will work just as well. I have a little bit of felt here. I know this isn't really a natural material, but it's kind of some thin fibers. I also have a little piece of paper that I wrote on. Just says Lab at Home on there. And I'd love to look a little bit more closely at the graphite, the pencil markings. So what we're going to do now is we are going to take a look at our slides. So I'm going to turn my flashlight on and put it underneath my cup, my platform, and I'm going to get my my lens ready. And to kind of show you what I'm going to use, the technique I'm going to use, I'm going to go ahead and switch to face cam again. All right. So here's my lens. Here is my platform. And here's how I would be able to, here's how I would look at something is, what I'll do is I'll hold it up close to my eye. I might even push my glasses aside. And then I'm going to take a look at, maybe I'll take a look at this little leaf on here. So I've put my slide down on my platform, And now I'm going to take a look at it. So I'm putting this close to my eye, and now I'm moving it up and down and looking through the drop, wow, at my leaf, which looks, my hand is a little shaky here, but that leaf looks pretty cool. So if it's not in focus, if it just looks blurry, I'm moving my head a little. There we go. That's about the right height for me. So in that way, we can kind of zoom in and out. So we're seeing that we have the water drop is on top of our piece of plastic or on our piece of tape, if we're using some tape. Yeah, and then we're looking through it to our slide on our platform. So you guys can't see what I'm seeing through my eyes, of course, or through this camera, but I do have a camera that'll let you see a little bit of what I'm seeing. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm going to switch to a camera that has kind of a fixed focus so it won't kind of blur in and out. I'm gonna switch to that camera really quick. What I'm going to do is I have my leaf here, and I'm going to look through my water drop. Let's see if we can line it up. There we go. Now, as I get closer, it gets a little better into focus. Let's see. Ooh, there we go. That looks pretty good. I need to move it the opposite direction that I think that I do because of the way that this camera mirrors. There we go. So we can kind of look really closely at our leaf piece or whatever we have. I also wanted to show you, I did it with some of the sand and it looked really cool. So I'm gonna get my sand that I did earlier and I'm gonna put it up here. Ooh, what do you think, friends? That looks pretty clear. And you can kind of up the magnification too. You can kind of find another focus point. Let's see if I can do that. There we go. So I'm looking really closely at some tiny pieces of sand. I wouldn't be able to do this with just my eyes. I thought this looked really cool. Let me see what other ones I have. So here I'm gonna look at, kind of center this. There we go, and I can take a closer look at my writing. So check that out. You can see where the lead of the pencil kind of rubbed against the paper. You can almost see the fibers of the paper as well. I think let's do one more. The other slide that I made earlier was that little piece of dry moss. So I'm gonna put that on there. And let's see if we can see it any closer. And so there's so many pieces of things that we can't just see with our eyes. You know, there's so many things that when we look closely, they look completely different. Check that out. Our beautiful moss there. It looks totally, and also you can see some of the air bubbles. That's pretty cool. So there's kind of so much to see there. And all we needed in order to see it was this platform space, a source of light, and a drop of water on a clear surface. Something else I really like about this is it's totally portable. If my water drop dries or I lose it, all I need to do is put another drop on. If my water droplet kind of gets too big and flattens out, all I gotta do is make another one, just like this. So it's something that you can take with you wherever you need to. It's something that's really accessible. It's not something that we have to kind of purchase specially, but it's a great way to get a closer look at our world. So I hope that you enjoyed making it. I know that I did, and I hope that you'll continue experimenting with it, seeing if it's possible for you to kind of get it any closer, or if you can make slides of any things. Like, I didn't do any more fibers, but I think that would be really cool. Doing hair would be something really cool to look at. I hope that you can all give that one a try. Thank you so much for joining me for Lab at Home today. I really enjoyed doing the first installment of our Black Excellence in Science series. Next week and the weeks following, we'll be doing some kind of all ages experiments and also highlighting the work of current Black scientists in the Triangle areas. I hope that I'll see you all next week to do that. I hope that I'll talk to you then, and I hope that you have a great remainder of your day. Thanks so much, friends.